We can study ecology at different levels. Each of the terms that are coming up over the next few slides are important for you to understand. A species is a group of similar organisms that can breed and produce fertile offspring. That means that they're the same type of organism. They can have babies, and their babies can also have babies. Think about some examples of organisms that are and are not the same species. For example, horses are a species, donkeys are a species. Horses and donkeys are not the same species, because even though horses and donkeys can breed and have babies, those offspring are not able to have their own offspring. So when horses and donkeys breed, they produce infertile offspring, so they're not the same species. Horses are a species, donkeys are a species, but they don't produce what we call viable offspring, so they are not the same species as each other. A population is a group of individuals that belong to the same species and live in the same area. So there are two components that make up a population, two things that we need to consider. In a population, everything is the same species, and they live in the same area. Think about some examples of populations. You could say everybody that lives in California is part of the same population. You could say all of the dogs that live in Los Angeles County are part of the same population. But we can have different sizes as well. We can say all the people in the United States are the same population. So there's a lot of flexibility in how you define organisms that live together. Usually in the wild, we think about them living close enough that they can breed with each other. But humans obviously travel a lot more than most animals. Look at this picture and think about, well, what's the difference between a population and a community, or how are they related? Well, a population is all organisms of the same species in the same area. A community is a bunch of different populations that live together in an area. So if we think about our area where we live, there are several different populations there. There are humans, there are squirrels, there are insects, there are plants, and each of those different species is a separate population, but we all live together in the same community. An ecosystem, if you look at this, what's the difference between a community and an ecosystem? Well, with the community, we're just talking about the living things. When we talk about an ecosystem, we're talking about the living and the non-living things, and that goes back to the idea of biotic and abiotic factors. So community is all of the biotic factors, all of the living things that live together in an area. An ecosystem is all of those living things plus the terrain, the hills and the valleys, the water, the weather, everything in that specific area. So think about the ecosystem that we live in. What makes up that ecosystem? What are the living and non-living things here? Now, what's bigger than an ecosystem? A biome is bigger than an ecosystem. So a biome is a group of ecosystems that share similar climates and typical organisms. So for example, we can talk about the desert biome. So a specific area would be an ecosystem. A specific desert or a part of a desert would be an ecosystem. The biome would be a description of what makes up that desert. What makes up that desert environment? What lives in the desert in general? What the terrain is like? What the weather is like? So we can see here. We can see an outlined part of the African continent where the ecosystems are similar, but that's clearly much bigger than an ecosystem. And when we look at the biomes together, then we have what we refer to as the biosphere. Biosphere is the entire planet with all its organisms and physical environments. The biosphere consists of all life on Earth and all parts of the Earth in which life exists, including land, water, and the atmosphere. The biosphere contains all organisms, from bacteria living underground or at the bottom of the ocean, to giant trees and rainforests, the whales in the polar seas, mold spores drifting through the air, and, of course, humans. We are part of the biosphere. The biosphere extends from about 8 kilometers above Earth's surface to as far as 11 kilometers below the surface of the ocean. So all of that area, 8 kilometers up in the air, all the way down to 11 kilometers below the bottom of the ocean, there are living things.